Hello, welcome to the Water Festival. Today we are going to be talking about how powerful our observations are for learning. We are going to make observations of an organism. And if you don't know what an organism, that's okay. It's just something that breathes, eats, or grows. And normally it refers to plants and animals, but sometimes it can also mean things like lichen or protists. So we're going to be making observations of an organism. And since this is a water festival, it's a pretty good bet that this is an organism that lives in or near the water. And then we're going to see just how much we learned just from observing. I really believe in the power of observation, so much so that if it were up to me, I would take you all out into the field and we would spend, 2 or 3 days observing. However, I don't have permission slips or buses, and you need to be home for dinner, so we have to figure out a different way to do this. And our different way is to use a website called iNaturalist. And we'll talk more about iNaturalist at the end, but let me go ahead and share my screen. In iNaturalist, anybody, people like you and me and your parents and your teachers and grandparents and whoever who wants to, can take pictures or record sounds and upload them to a website where anybody else in the world can look at their observations. So, and specifically, they're making observations of organisms. So what we see on the screen here is a map of South Dakota, and this orange box is a map. And each of these orange squares is an observation that somebody made of our organism that we're going to study. And we'll take another look at this in a bit, but let's get on to our organism, and I'm going to show that to you. And if you know what it is, don't say anything yet, because I don't want you to be fixated on what it is. I want you to be thinking about observing it. And so just for a moment, let's think about what does it mean to observe? Press pause and have that discussion with who's ever near you. What is an observation? I wish I could be there to hear all your great answers. I'm sure you had great ideas. Now, for our purposes today, an observation is something that gives us information through our senses, meaning we see it, we hear it, we smell it, we touch it, we taste it. Now, in the outdoors, you have to be very, very careful about tasting and touching. But since we're on the internet, today we're actually just going to be using seeing. Now, an observation is not opinion. So if you look at our organism, you go, ooh, gross, ooh, it's so cute. You know, that's opinion. And there's a place for that, but this isn't it. Observation is also not identification. That's why I didn't want you to rush right in like, oh, what is it? Or I know what that is. I want you to just take some time and get information about it. So I'm going to go ahead and bring our organism back. And I want you to make observations about this organism. All right. Now, I want you to go a little bit further than making observations. I want you to record them using pictures, numbers, and words. And I'm going to show you an example of what I mean by that. This is the recording I made of the organism. And I used a picture. And I know that in school, you have kids who can draw and kids who can't. I was always in the group that couldn't. You'll notice like its head is not quite right. That is okay. We're not doing art. We're doing observations. And so you can use words to describe, like I described its eyes there. You can count and measure. So let's go ahead, press pause, and make observations of the organism using pictures, words, and numbers. Oh, I wish I could be there to see your observations and your recordings. I bet they're really awesome. You know this organism pretty well now, and I will do the great reveal It is a blue heron, a great blue heron. And there are quite a few of them in our state. And I'm scrolling through some of the pictures that people took and uploaded to the website. Take this away. We're going to look at a lot of blue herons because that's how we get even more information. Looking at one is really awesome, but looking at a lot is even better. And since we can't be out in the field for multiple days, we're going to bring the field to us. As I said before, each one of these pictures is an observation. And if I go back to our map and I click on this one, we can see right there, that is the observation that is right here. So I'm going to scroll through very slowly, and I want you to start looking at all these pictures and start finding patterns as to where you're seeing the heron. Like, you don't have to be super specific. I'm not asking like, oh, that's in Sioux Falls, or oh, that's up the Missouri River. What I'm asking you is to say like, oh, this heron is in water and by a field, and oh, this heron is standing on a shore by water, that kind of thing. So I won't do all of them, but let's go ahead and just scroll down. And I want you looking at the herons. What are they doing? Where are they? What else is in the picture? What kind of background? We're going to be taking a closer look at many of these photos later. And that was the picture we started with. Okay. I think you should be able to see some patterns. So where did you see them? Well, I saw three main places. There were more than three, absolutely. But I saw the herons in three main places: in water, trees, and fields. And we're going to look at pictures of heron in water, trees, and fields and see if we can't use our observations to develop explanations of what they're doing there. Okay. Let's look at our first picture. So what was the heron doing? Well, I see the heron has a snake in its beak and it's standing in the water. And I emailed the woman and I asked her about this picture, who took the picture, and I asked her about what happened next. And she said, well, the heron picked it up and shook the snake around and dropped it a couple of times and then ate it. So that gives us a big clue about why herons are in the water. Essentially, we can see it eating. Herons like to be near water because that's where their food is. And food is an important way to understand animal behavior. When you look at an animal, one of the things you should ask yourself is this animal hunting or in some way trying to get food? That will help you understand what it's trying to do. Let's look at our next picture. So this time we see the heron in the trees and we see sticks, and these are actually baby herons. So one of the explanations we can develop from our observation is that herons use trees for nesting. And that's another important animal behavior, is mating and raising young. So we can see herons in trees for nesting. Those baby herons they really do look like dinosaurs, don't they? Okay, are you ready for another one? So we have water and we have trees. Let's look at another tree photo. This one's a little tricky, isn't it? Um, we've talked about food, and maybe the heron is in the tree so it can see the food better. And if you zoom in and were to look closely, and I don't know that you can really see it, but this tree is a willow, and willows grow near water. So the heron could be interested in food. The heron could have a nest nearby. Absolutely. We just looked at a nest in a tree. But did you notice as you were making your observations the curve of the heron's neck and the curve of the tree, and how the heron's legs and the tree branches look very similar? Well, that's because herons will sit in trees for camouflage, either while they're resting from hunting or if they're just near a nest but not on it. Another important part of animal behavior is protecting themselves, either from predators, from rivals, or even from the elements like the wind and the cold or the sun. So if a predator were to come down and just take a quick look at this tree, it might think, nothing to see here. I'll just keep moving along. And I know I'm a kayaker. One of the things that has happened to me is as I've been paddling along a river, all of a sudden it feels like part of a tree just gets up and flies away. And of course it's not the tree flying away, it's that there was a heron in the tree and I just didn't notice it until it flew away. Okay, let's take a look at another picture. Now, if you thought that last one was tricky, this was super tricky. So a heron's in a field, and what kind of explanation can we develop? I don't see any water for food. No trees for raising young. It's not particularly well camouflaged. We need some more information. And that's where iNaturalist comes in. So let me just go ahead and close out the big picture and show you the iNaturalist webpage. And you can see that there's a map. Now this picture was taken where this blue pin is. I'm going to increase the size of the map. And we're going to scroll in. See if that won't give us some more information about why this heron is in the field. Yes, as we see, the pin is right near some water. So yes, the heron was near water. I bet the person who took it was driving along the road and looked and saw the heron and took the picture and kept out the water. In fact, I know she did, because you know who took that picture? I did. Like I was saying at the beginning, anybody can add photos to this. And so it's a way for you to help other people observe and learn about the world around them. In fact, this picture here was taken by Mrs. Preheim. She's a good friend of mine. She teaches kindergarten in Armour. So I said at the beginning that our time together was going to be about learning about how powerful our observations are for learning. And so I want to show you just how true that is. You have learned a lot by observing herons, and I don't even think you realize just how much you've learned. So to show you, I'm going to this website called allaboutbirds.org, and I've looked up the great blue heron, and let's scroll down to its information. Here's an overview of it. So we can learn the habitat. And we knew herons lived in marshes near water. If you look at your journal recordings, you'll see water there. And we knew that herons ate food that lives in water, normally fish, obviously snakes. And we knew that herons lived in trees. And some of you saw the herons stalking in the water as we were scrolling through the pictures. So you know a lot about herons already. Now I want to show you one more picture, and this was taken by another friend of mine. He's a teacher too, Mr. Johnson. He teaches high school in Sioux Falls. And this was a picture he took near the outdoor campus in Sioux Falls. And I was looking at it and I scrolled in and I saw this. Can you see that in the background? It's plastic. So while we learn about herons, we also have to be thinking about how we can take care of them. And one of the ways we can take care of herons and we can take care of all animals is to be careful with our trash. Make sure it goes where it needs to go, in the trash can, not outside, because that trash ended up in the water where the herons are. And even if the heron doesn't eat it, that plastic will break apart and it will get in the water and the little critters will eat it and something else will eat the little critters. And then finally a fish will eat it, and then the heron will eat the fish that ate the little critter that ate the plastic. That's why we have to keep our trash where it belongs. Thank you for being part of the Water Festival. I hope you continue to explore and use your observations because it's a great way to learn.